guests are here.
This is the story of a woman who's always center stage.
With her flaming red hair and her blue Thunderbird, it was quite a picture.
Ready for her audience.
She was always dressed to the nines.
And forever young.
A message for the bride and groom?
The glamour never stopped.
If she's happy, age, what the hell does it matter?
But the high life comes with a price.
There were lots of sharks circling in Florida down there, and it just seemed she was vulnerable.
But like most good plays, this one ended too soon.
It's September 1993 in Greenwich Village, New York, and Richie and Charlene Schwarzkopf are having a dinner party.
Important guests are here. Most of them. There they are.
The hosts film the guests of honor over on the couches. Charlene's parents on the right, and Richie's mom, Jean Schwarzkopf, on the left.
Richie would love to entertain, have us all in the city, and it would always be quite festive. We would all fret over what to wear.
And we're expecting the whole family to come over for a barbecue that's probably going to be inside.
Get to sit in the room here and chat with Jean and everybody else before the crowd comes.
It's a nice treat.
Richie learned everything he knows about entertaining from his mother. The original party queen, she's led a remarkable life. She is born Jean Pippola to Italian immigrants uptown in the Bronx.
It was a very typical Italian family. Life revolved around the kitchen and cooking, and I learned how to cook at a young age from them.
Age 19, she marries Michael Pelle, also Italian-American, and they have two sons, Richie and his younger brother Bob.
They were kids when they married. Then World War II started, and my father was drafted.
After the war, their relationship broke down, and they each went their separate ways. In 1947, Jean falls in love with a level-headed German immigrant, Henry Schwarzkopf. And together, they build a new family.
My mother, she introduced us as, this is your father, and we just sort of accepted him, and I never looked back.
And in 1951, the family is completed by the arrival of daughter Renee.
She was a little princess. I mean, they dressed her up, and she was always decked out like a little mom.
Henry owns and runs a diamond drilling factory, giving him access to the best diamond brokers in town. Perfect for someone who likes to look her best.
When it came time to buy gifts for my mother, he always picked out the highest quality, hand-picked stones.
One gift in particular stands out.
She had a 8-carat diamond ring, and it became part of her everyday put on in the morning. Put my ring on.
The family lives in the suburbs of New York in affluent Pelham, where their lavish parties are the talk of the neighborhood.
My mother loved to entertain, and for some reason it seemed like our house was where everybody gathered.
My mother would open up the front door, and the whole party would form a line hold on to each other and go out onto the property and out towards the street, and they would do this limbo line. And yeah, I think it caught the attention of the neighborhood. Yeah.
In 1977, with the kids having flown the nest, Henry and Jean take a trip to visit friends in Florida. And they're as spontaneous as ever.
And we get a phone call saying, hi, Rich, we just bought a house. And Mom, I said, you just went down for the weekend. No, we bought the house. So they bought this very beautiful ranch-style house on the water in Newport Richey, Florida.
We thought it was a good idea, get my father to retire, sell the business, and they wanted to travel.
But in 1991, Henry falls ill and passes away, leaving Jean a 72-year-old widow.
I mean, she's had 2 husbands and been married almost all her life, and now, she's alone down there.
It was quite difficult when my father died for her to carry on.
So when Jean makes the trip from Florida to New York in September 1993, she's the center of attention. While Charlene films the occasion,
Everybody is here. The whole family.
Richie tackles the food.
Chef at work. Chef at work. The shrimp man.
And Jean leads the conversation.
We were sad that my mother, was sort of alone. We had all asked her somehow if maybe she wanted to move back up north. She was very happy with her house in Florida and not going to leave.
Just 5 weeks later, Jean finds herself traveling again, this time to Connecticut. After photos on the beachfront, the whole family lets loose. There's Richie and Bob trying out their moves.
Well, I think we always know how to have a good time, and you get good friends, family, so it was really a happy event.
During the festivities, Jean and Renee retire to a nearby bar for some catching up.
I saw Renee and Jean having drinks, and I come up from behind them, and Jean sees me and sort of taps Renee on the shoulder. And I have to say, out of all of the videos I've ever taken of Jean, that is my favorite, because it shows a little bit of her personality. I also think she was saying, oh, there's Charlene with the video camera again.
What the camera doesn't capture is that Jean's got big news. She's seeing someone, and he's more than 20 years her junior. He's a successful contractor named Athanakos Gerai-Kondakis, known to all as Tommy.
She would tell me, but say, don't tell your brother. So you play along and then call your brother.
But the romance is moving faster than Jean lets on. When 74-year-old Jean Schwarzkopf reveals to her children that she has found love, they're unsure what to make of it.
We all sort of look at each other and go, all right, Mom, have a good time, but just be careful. My sister and I are like, if she's happy, age, what the hell does it matter?
Just months later, Jean and Tommy pay Renee a visit in New York. The news she brings leaves Renee speechless.
I remember her saying, let's go to the ladies' room, and saying to me, what would you think if we got married? And I said, I'm going to tell you what you always told me, married you can always get. And she looked at me and said, well, we already are. So that's how I found out. was quite a shock.
Bob and Renee accept their mom's news, but Richie is more apprehensive.
My mother said, well, I didn't want to tell you. I knew you'd be upset. And I was now concerned about, what's going on.
Richie checks up on his mom's investments, and what he discovers is alarming.
I kept track of a lot of my mother's finances being on Wall Street and found out that she had signed over a $100,000 CD that came due to Tommy. I was not happy, and I told my mother that CD had to be signed back to my mother immediately.
Tommy returns the money, but Jean explains she was just trying to help him feel like the man of the relationship.
She wanted him to feel like he had money, so yeah, she would put things in his name.
Tommy's financial demands escalate.
It got to a point when he wanted the house put in his name that she said, enough, no, the house is for my family. So yeah, I think things started to crumble.
And in 1995, Jean decides to file for divorce, and her money is safe from Tommy. But Jean being Jean, the two stay friends.
I thought, wow, that's one albatross off her neck, and hopefully life will get better after that. So I thought it was a good thing. Now, be careful what you wish for.
In February 1995, Richie and his wife Charlene make a trip to check up on his newly single mom.
Florida. Newport Richie, to be exact. And there's Newport Richie. Let's check the backyard.
And Charlene's camera is always at the ready.
Be careful sleepwalking here. Could wind up in the canal.
Exhausting morning walking around.
To capture Jean's upscale lifestyle.
Oh, you didn't take the paper in the front of the house, then, did you?
Well, where is it? Yeah, I didn't see it in the front.
Her house in Florida was that, clean, elegant, sort of modern.
But some new decorations raise questions.
Some nice flowers for Valentine's Day around. And birthday.
That suggests Jean's no longer single, and ex-husband Tommy's artwork indicates he could still be on the scene.
He used her lipstick to draw that on the wall. And I think those kinds of actions make me feel like there's something more going on.
Saturday evening, and we're just getting ready to go and have some dinner.
Jean wants to show off her Florida social scene to Richie and Charlene.
Who are we having dinner with?
Nick. Irene. I'm saying Nick and Elena.
We're Nick and Eddie. Okay.
See you at the restaurant.
And there's someone else Jean wants Richie to meet.
Rich, listen, my son wants to talk to you a minute. Okay.
And it's not Tommy.
I called this person up. I had never met, didn't know, and so, and would you join us?
Serge, join us for dinner. We'd love you to join us.
Tell him you don't take no for an answer.
The voice on the phone is Sergio Volpe. And while Richie might not know Sergio, he's clearly important to Jean.
You gotta eat somewhere. All right. We'll see you there. Bye-bye.
He's coming?
He said when he got home from work, he had a steak and some beers. He said,
He's crazy. He just thought he won't.
He said he'll be there.
I thought it was just another, wounded puppy that she was going to take care of.
Jean straps on her most impressive. Charlene's camera follows them on their night out. After dinner, the group hits the bar at Eleni's, Jean's favorite hangout.
Everybody knew my mother when we walked in. This is Sergio, my mother.
Sergio has made it. He lights Jean's cigarette.
Fiona John was.
The gathering goes well past midnight, with Jean playing to the camera at every opportunity.
She's going to take a video shot.
Sergio insists they're just friends.
Big girl here.
I thought maybe this was just another Mother Teresa case. It didn't sound like somebody she would go out with.
Unsure what to make of their friendship, especially considering Jean's recent troubles, Richard decides to appeal to Sergio to look after his mom.
I said, look, I said, my mother is a very vulnerable woman. And I said, if you see something wrong, could you let me know?
Better to have him as an ally.
There were lots of sharks circling in Florida down there, and it just seemed she was vulnerable.
Saturday, September 20th, 1997. It's a blustery day in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and the Schwarzkopfs are gathered for a very special occasion.
My son Kurt was getting married on Cape Cod, so the whole family went there.
But Jean's unable to make the journey from Florida.
She just didn't feel up for it. It was fine, I understood it. She was 78.
I talked to her while I was packing and still saying, wish you were here.
As Richie waits for the ceremony, he receives a phone call from Florida.
I got some detective, and they had said, your mother has passed away or has died. And I said, what happened? And she was murdered.
Total disbelief. We had our mother taken away from us in a terrible way. Didn't know what happened, didn't want to go through the wedding, but yet we had to carry on. I was a wreck.
The siblings come together, devastated and confused.
People thought, oh my God, the father is so emotional about the wedding, because tears and stuff. And of course they didn't know anything about my mother being killed.
Everybody loved my mother, and of course the first question was, how's your mom? How's she doing in Florida? And we go, oh, fine,
While everyone celebrates around them, all Jean's children can think about is who killed their mom. Meanwhile, in Newport Richey, the local sheriff's department are at the crime scene. And is down to Detective Jim Sessa to investigate.
So this was actually my very first homicide, Jean's case. I wanted to do the right job, and I wanted to make sure everything was done the best that it could be, and I didn't want to fail. When I walked in, the first thing I noticed, there was no forced entry, none, in around the house. No screens were cut, no doors were kicked in, no jimmying of any of the locks, nothing to show any force. The house was immaculate all the way through.
But everything changes when he reaches the bedroom.
You saw on her bed several empty jewelry boxes just scattered. The drawers were open, disarrayed. You've seen somebody had rifled through them. And I see her body in the wardrobe closet of the bedroom. She was face up, and she was wrapped in duct tape, yards and yards of duct tape.
There's no question he's dealing with a homicide.
And we've seen right away how vicious the attack was for her, and how vicious the perpetrator of this act was heartless.
And the medical examiner makes a startling discovery.
They removed all the tape, and they found flowers jammed down her throat. Hence, she most likely died from asphyxia, that she couldn't breathe. And now we're saying, okay, why the flowers? Why would somebody throw flowers down her throat and then tape her up?
Richie, Bob, and Renee arrive the following day.
I remember driving up and yellow caution tape all around the house. My mother and I had a hiding place for some of her jewelry, so the first thing I wanted to check was to see if it was still there. There was quite an array of empty jewelry boxes all over her bed.
They informed us that, of course, the 8-carat ring was missing.
With my mother, I mean, it always came down to jewelry. That had to be the motive. I said, the one person, that I didn't know offhand was Tommy. And I said, they've divorced, and, maybe it's Tommy, I'd look into him.
He had easy access to the house. He possibly wasn't happy about the dissolvement of their marriage. So there were a lot of reasons to suspect Tommy.
Tommy is brought in for an interview.
Did she not sign you over a $100,000 fee?
Yeah.
Why?
Look, why? I don't know.
You don't know.
He's giving me the $100,000. Say, here is the money.
Our job is to get to the truth and to find out what we can.
While Tommy is being interviewed, officers execute a search warrant on his home.
We found some clothing with some blood on it. And the other officers, the other detectives, had found duct tape, silver duct tape, in the garage.
Results are in for the blood found on Tommy's clothing. And it's not jeans.
I found out he had a medical condition, and that medical condition produced the blood.
And the duct tape is a generic brand.
Plus, he was alibied out for the time frame of the homicide. So that left us totally in the blank as far as Tommy was concerned.
And then, Tommy offers Detective Sessa a new lead.
No, I try to protect Jim.
From what? From what?
Because that guy, you see, Jim, anytime he don't want to see, he tell me exactly the truth. He used to tell me, you know, what's his name, whatever, Octavio.
So he says, as I'll tell you right now, I'll bet you I know exactly who did this. And Octavio. He's been trying to be with her and constantly talking about her, and she threw him off. If anybody did anything, I'll bet you he did.
And when Detective Sessa looks into Ottavio, he discovers a connection. Ottavio owns a bakery just a mile from Jean's home. And he's the brother of Sergio Volpe, Jean's new friend.
Like you said, they might realize.
Sessa decides to check into Ottavio Volpe before bringing him in, and Jean's family wants to help.
You know, to get those things removed.
I said, I'm not leaving until I find out what happened.
After forensics have cleared and processed the scene, Richie, Renee, and Bob set up camp at Jean's bungalow and film it all.
We actually moved in and stayed at the house, and then we just tried to do detective work.
Tact numbers.
Going through papers and trying to work with the police.
We spent our time basically trying to get her, figure out her life a little more, which we did, and which almost surprised us more than the whole thing.
The family believe the key to solving Jean's murder is the stolen diamond ring.
We're thinking of posting a reward for leading to the conviction of the people who did the murder, plus the return of the major pieces of jewelry. Do we have a good photo?
Diamond's easy to take out.
Very easy, it's almost up.
It's not that easy to sell unless you really know what you're doing. You're gonna wind up with 10% of what it's worth. Whoever they're gonna fence it to knows this thing isn't didn't fall off the truck somewhere.
But Jean had never mentioned the name Ottavio Volpe before.
You're not gonna sell it privately like that.
Okay, Sessa just got off the phone. He told us that Jean went with Octavio to help him buy a black Mercedes in 1996.
We found out all sorts of information that we had no idea, money that she had loaned people.
So that was the worry, One of these people just got overly greedy.
It's Saturday, October 4th, and we're about to start the memorial service for Jean.
You can bring that, get somebody to...
2 weeks after Jean's murder, the Schwarzkopfs say their final farewells with a ceremony in her backyard.
Tried to be as, elegant and simple, but beautiful for my mother, who would like that. Let Renee do.
You know the baby fruit. Oh, need help, Bob?
Her life, the place she lived was had everything in it: romance, drama, bad things, good things, but mostly a lot of fun. She was a person who really enjoyed life. But like most good plays, this one ended too soon. Everybody laughed and cried, and it was a memorable night, actually.
Before returning to their own homes, the family decide to take a detour.
Okay, we're on our way to the airport, and we're just gonna tool by the infamous bakery where Octavio works. See if anybody's there.
A few weeks into his investigation, Detective Sessa gets another tip about Ottavio from a woman who used to date him.
Octavio talking about an old woman, referred to her as an old woman who lives in the harbors. and she has a rock and she has a white bed.
This fixation on her ring indicates a motive. And they bring in Ottavio Volpe for questioning.
He was working at the time of the murder. You know, we didn't even say what time it was, whatever. But he was either home or at work. That's all he was.
But then he offers detectives a lead and describes a call from a friend called Frankie a couple of days before.
A friend of mine from Chicago called me up and says, what's his name is coming back to food? His name is Anthony Who. This is a friend. He said, just pick him up. So it's Anthony. Yeah.
A friend of his asked this guy, Tony, to come down from Chicago and let him hang out with him for a while.
Frank Chiluzzi, okay? What did he call you up to tell you that Anthony last name would know this company?
I asked him specifically, what's his name? He said, I don't know his whole name.
Wait, you pick up a guy, name is Anthony, you don't know his last name, for a friend of yours in Chicago, for what purpose?
Come on, Octavio. Come on, Octavio, this ain't right.
I'm a buster.
Was this fair enough that this woman had to look like this?
Oh my God.
Was this fair enough that this had to happen this way?
Oh.
This wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't supposed to happen. But it did.
It did. What was Anthony doing here at the time of the crime? And then leaves at the time of the crime? What airline?
Southwest.
Southwest Airlines. Where you went to Southwest Airlines, what time?
4:45.
Detectives have the airline, landing time, and a first name.
We check the airline and see a passenger list. The first Tony was in a wheelchair. No good. It's not going to be him. The second Tony was a person by the name of Anthony Carcione from Chicago. He was scheduled to come in on the day prior to the murder, and he was scheduled to leave the day of the murder, but he never made it. This was the break. This was it.
Detective Sessa and his team decide it's time for a trip to Chicago. They meet Frankie, the man who called Ottavio.
We told him why we were there. Comes right out and says, I don't know what you're talking about. Do you know an Anthony Carcione? He's very hesitant now. He's thinking. He goes, well, I think so. Yeah, I think I know the guy you're talking about. He said, well, a friend of mine gave me a call and said he needed a ride back up from Florida. And then I took him home and I dropped him off, and that was it.
Instead of flying back to Chicago, Frankie collected Anthony and drove him home.
We knew we had Ottavio, we knew we had Frank Gigliotti, and now we have to find Anthony Carcione.
They tracked down Anthony to his Chicago home.
I said, well, could you explain to me why you went down to Florida and you drove up with Frankie Gigliotti? I had to go down. I had to go down to Florida, and I had some trouble with an old lady. I didn't want to fly. I didn't want to fly no more, so I decided to drive up with my good buddy, Frankie.
Detective Sessa can't believe that Anthony has mentioned trouble with an old lady. But when Detective Sessa returns to Florida, the state's attorney says there's still not enough evidence to make arrests. Determined to get these dangerous men off the streets, Sessa has an idea.
In killing her, they took the goods that they stole from her and they transported interstate. So that's when I decided to call the FBI.
I knew that we would have a hook into prosecuting this case federally if we could show that stolen property crossed state lines back to Chicago.
Del Fuoco convinces Frankie to take a plea deal in exchange for his testimony on moving the stolen jewelry. Frankie pleads guilty to conspiracy to transport, transmit, and transfer in interstate commerce and is sentenced to 5 years in prison. And in October 2000, the case goes to trial in federal court.
I was not able to charge murder, but I was able to charge all the other things.
Ottavio Volpe pleads guilty to charges of conspiracy, interstate travel and transportation in aid of racketeering, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. Anthony Carcione pleads not guilty to the same charges, but both are found guilty and sentenced to life in prison plus 20 years.
Once we got the convictions and had all the evidence, the key was, okay guys, here's the evidence, wrapped up with a nice bow.
Detectives won't let the murder charges go and pursue the evidence piece by piece. A year later, Ottavio Volpe and Anthony Carcione are brought to trial again, this time in the state of Florida, and finally on charges of first-degree murder. Prosecutors lay out what they believe happened. After meeting Jean through his brother Sergio, Ottavio secretly became fixated on her diamond ring. But knowing Jean would recognize him if he attempted to take it, he calls his friend Frankie, who arranges for Anthony to help.
Ottavio parked the car. Anthony got out with the flowers and the gloves and the tape, and then walked up to Jean's home. Jean answers it. He's posing as a delivery man for the flowers. Once she opens the door, he bull rushes her, gets her in, drops the flowers, drags her into the bedroom, demanding to know where the jewelry is, where's the rock. After she could do whatever she could do to give him what he wanted, he then begins to viciously beat her, took part of the flowers that he delivered, put them in her mouth after she's been beaten severely, and then started taping her up like a mummy. All around her body, everywhere. Takes everything, puts it in her handbag, along with the flowers that he brought, and starts walking out of the house like nothing happened.
Ottavio Volpe and Anthony Carcione are both found guilty of first-degree murder and given life sentences.
This was a terrible situation on a poor woman who was a grandmother and mother of a family that was lost because a few men thought they could take care of her, and she was an easy mark.
People were brought to justice, and that's good. It doesn't bring Mom back, but it does make you feel better that justice was served.
They took a wonderful woman who was younger than her age and was living a good life and had many more years to come.
Even though Jean's life ended tragically, the Schwarzkopf children remain inspired by her life story. Jean took the years she had left and enjoyed them to the fullest.
I think she would find it ironic all of a sudden that she became one of her own biographies. She loved reading about people, and people's lives fascinated her. And all of a sudden, her story has become everybody else's story. Maybe that would make her happy in some weird way.
People are strange creatures. They kill each other for the most ridiculous reasons you can possibly imagine. I am Joe Kenda. I was a homicide detective. I have seen every kind of evil under the sun, but the story I am about to tell you tonight, it speaks to a completely different level of betrayal. My, this is a story of a successful and generous businessman, a sharp entrepreneur, a guy who always started the day with a booming hello. Hello, hello. He meets a nurse, a woman everyone believed had a heart as big as his own. She struck people as being very quiet, but very sweet and very nice. And our man falls head over heels. He could not hide the feelings he had for her. He was very much in love with her. But when a sickness consumes their marriage, those around them start to realize that there was something was very wrong. Money is no protection against death, and this was not a natural death. Let us step back in time to March 10th, 2007 in Miami. A big day for bride Rosemary Clayton and her family. She is finally marrying her love, William Leslie. That is Rosie's oldest brother, 52-year-old Steve Clayton, proudly walking her down the aisle. 11 months prior to that wedding, the family lost their dad. Rosie asked her big brother if he would step in. Of course, there was a lot of tears. She could not imagine anybody else standing in place for her dad. When the minister asks who gives this woman to be married to this man, Steve speaks up and says, "I do in the memory of my father." It was sentimental to be gathered at something so special, where their father was not present. With their father's passing, Rosie's brother Steve is now the head of the family. And though he has never had children of his own, he has always been a father figure to his siblings. When their father and mother were married, Steve was just about 2 or 3 years old. He had 4 sisters and Rosie is the youngest. He was 10 years older than her. So there really was not a moment when Steve was not in Rosie's life. Steve was her big brother, and he was her hero. He was everything a little girl would want in a big brother. He played football, he wrestled in high school, and so that really made him bigger than life for his little sister. After high school, Steve graduates college with a degree in finance and quickly matures into a shrewd businessman. Steve, with a partner, started a company called Physical Therapy Resources. That eventually became a national company with physical therapy centers all over the country. Steve and a friend met at work. He was in the hospital, and the friend was in the same hospital. And that is how they met and became friends. He was very successful and eventually sold his interest in his business. And basically, from that point on, he was retired. His goal was to retire at the age of 40. He missed it by 1 year. He retired when he was 41. Selling his business frees up Steve to do whatever he wants. And what he wants to do is give back. He would mentor such a large group of young men, helping them start up a business, or helping them find out what direction they want their life to go. Steve was extremely generous with not only his resources, but with his time. And Steve always has time for his family. There is home video Rosie films as Steve teases their Uncle Max. It is special. Their dad was not so funny. He was more serious. Serious, much more serious. He was always serious. But where did that money come from, Steve? I do not know. And when his sister Rosie gets married, it is Steve's good humor that makes him the life and soul of the occasion. People say, "Please get up, Steve." Plate. Steve was always the first guy to get up to give a toast anywhere. Hello, hello, hello. It was always ad-lib for him from the heart. Steve says, "This is my way of like getting away from the emotional stuff." Then he tells the groom, William, "Thank you so much. I'm not going to look at you. Thank you so much for making my sister so happy." And my dad, Steve, is never one to hide his emotions. He tells the crowd, "My dad told me before he passed to take care of my sister, to honor you, and he loved you very much." Steve says I have to get serious here. All right, I am cool. All right, you guys are great companions. You are great partners. And my sister, I have never seen her happier. After the speeches, Steve steps up for the father-daughter dance. He came up, and they got ready to dance. And before the music started, they had a very, very powerful moment. A surprise recording of their dearly departed father plays out. The recording says the best moment of my day was when you were climbing my knee. You would say, "Daddy, I love you. I miss those days. I really do, because I love you too." Steve had so many Judys that day. He was her dad. He was the best man. He was the entertainment. He was the one that kept everyone calm, kept everyone laughing. He was a natural at it. Despite his success and close network of family and friends, Steve's own romantic life has been rocky. He looked for a partner that was as focused and determined and loving and caring as he was, and that is a tall order to fill. Now 52, his family figures it will take a very special person to sweep him off his feet. I think Steve was always looking for somebody on a level he could connect with emotionally, intellectually, spiritually. But 3 years later, that is exactly what happens. In late 2009, Steve decides to leave his home state of Florida for a change of pace in North Carolina. He really loved being physical. He loved walking. He loved anything to do with being outdoors. So when he moved from South Florida to North Carolina, he had the opportunity to be outdoors a lot more. Within just a few months, Steve announces that he has met someone special. He seemed to have a glow that he had been missing for a little while, and he was excited. Her name is Lana Walsh, 12 years his junior. She is a nurse who grew up in Oklahoma. She struck people as being very sweet, very quiet, but very sweet. And this quiet kind of stood out because Steve is not very quiet. Steve's personality was gigantic. She was more like a wallflower. Despite their differences, Steve is sure she is the one. They were very affectionate with each other, always arm in arm. Steve always hugging her, squeezing her, kissing her. His sister felt happy for her brother. So, of course, anybody that he loved, the family was going to embrace. It is not long before Steve asks Lana to move in with him. After they got to know each other quite a bit more, Steve persuaded her to come to Charlotte. And, Steve can be very convincing, and they add some new additions to the family. The first dog that Steve and Lana got was Guinness, an Italian greyhound. They loved the breed, and so they decided that they wanted another one, and her name was Sadie. With Lana, Steve finally feels he has found his missing piece. Steve always had great things to say about her. He referred to her as his Lana Sue. He could not hide the feelings he had for her. He was very much in love with her. I think Steve found himself well grounded with Lana. The family felt like Steve found a certain sense of peace with her. Steve Clayton came to North Carolina for a change from his old life and found a whole new future. When Steve Clayton danced with his sister at her wedding, he dreamed of finding his own special someone. And now, 6 years later, he is about to marry the love of his life, a VA nurse named Lana Walsh. It was a lovely day in November 2013. Many in the family had traveled to North Carolina just to be there and enjoy that day with him, and he made it very special for everyone. Lana and Steve's wedding took place at their house in Charlotte. It was such a beautiful event. You could just see the love. Just beaming. Both of them were. Soon after, the couple decided to relocate and move into their forever home, just over the border in South Carolina, on the banks of Lake Wylie. It was like something on a postcard. This gorgeous ocean blue home sitting on a gorgeous piece of lakefront property. It was very lovely. The couple set about refurbishing their new home, decorating it with Steve's collection of artworks and antiques. Steve was the kind of person that objects were very personal to him, and he was very proud of his possessions. They were all unique in some way. The move allows the couple to indulge in their love of nature. So if there was something fun and outdoorsy to do, He was going to be the first one there, and he was gung-ho about it. Their relocation to South Carolina also means the pair are closer to Steve's extended family. A nephew by marriage wed Steve's niece in 2010, so he officially became his nephew. They hung out with Steve and Lana a lot when they moved up here. They would go out to dinner with them. They would go to concerts. They would go to special events every holiday. They are also just a 30-minute drive from Lana's son and grandchildren. And the pair never say no to a bit of babysitting. Steve had a way with children, because Steve has always been a child at heart. So he is the kind of guy that gets down on the floor and plays with the kids. Pop goes the weasel. And with the kids around, there is never a dull moment in the Clayton household. Here, Lana filmed Steve attempting to describe the limbo while her twin granddaughters watch. They say we will make Papa do it. Steve explains, so there's a stick, and I gotta go like that, and I gotta go under the stick, and I gotta get real low to get under the stick. It is a game. It is a dance. These are dances. You have to tell me how to act it out. Lana is tickled, but the twins are more interested in their ice cream. Steve enjoyed playing all kinds of games, whether it was Scrabble or even a silly child's game. He tells them you wanted to get in, don't you? You do, don't you? Just spin the spinner, and then turn the handles many times. 2, and put your head in the thing. Put your chin on the thing. Okay, spin it forward. Both of them, or one. Both of them. Steve was a huge teddy bear. He always had kids hanging on him. He asked, what number did you get? 3. And Lana is always game for some fun, too. Oh, no. It is coming. It is coming up. It does it every time. Here it comes. Here it comes. Cheers. 5 years into their marriage, Steve and Lana appear to be thriving. But in June 2018, Steve suddenly falls ill. He says he feels dizzy, complaining of vertigo. He said that his ear hurt and that he felt nauseous, and he started getting sick in the yard, and his friend felt real bad for him. The friend knew that he had had issues with vertigo prior to this. Steve said he'd been very ill and did not know exactly what was wrong. He just remembers that he was working out in the garden, and he started to feel dizzy, a little nauseous, a little dizzy, headache, and he thought that maybe he had gotten sunstroke. The friend asks, you okay? He says, yeah. As a nurse, Lana thinks the best thing for Steve is bed rest. Steve said he remembered laying down, and he said the next time he opened his eyes, 36 hours had passed. Worried, Rosie calls Lana to see if she can explain Steve's mystery illness. Rosie asked her what she thought was going on because that is very odd for any person of any age to lose 36 hours of time. And Lana said that he was fine, and that she was watching him, and she was making sure he was okay. Though he has never been ill like this before, Lana thinks that Steve is just exhausted. The family felt reassured that Lana was there to take care of him in any way that she could, especially with her knowledge as a nurse. It seems Steve's larger-than-life energy is starting to catch up with him, but just 2 weeks later, it appears Lana's treatment has worked. Steve is back to his old self, throwing a party for the 4th of July. That party was just as great as every other party the family had been to there. Steve was his normal affectionate self. Everybody had a great time. Here is Steve dancing with Lana as they celebrate in style. He grabbed Lana right away, and everyone just kind of followed suit and all joined in. The nephew remembers watching them hug and him kiss her, and they were completely in love. Things are good at the Clayton home, and no one doubts Lana and Steve's lives are going to be happy and long. On July 21st, 2018, a call comes into York County 911. Police units arrive on scene, and body cam footage recorded by responding Officer Sergeant Day captures what they find. As they walk into the front door, there is Steve right at the bottom of this grand staircase. And unfortunately, at that point, he is gone. He is dead. You hear the officers whispering and talking in low voices. That is because Lana Clayton is just around the corner, distraught and crying. So they do not want to say anything that is disturbing to her. She said she left the next day, did not put anything, just his wife and family. Sergeant Day needs to talk with Steve's wife Lana to find out what has happened. The sergeant says, ma'am, I am Sergeant Day. I am going to be here for just a little while until the coroner gets here and transporting those things. Lana says, oh no, ma'am, I am just fine. It feels good to me to stand if I am not making you uncomfortable. Lana tells Sergeant Day that Steve had been suffering dizziness for 2 days. Stephen had been very ill with vertigo. She had found him Thursday morning that he stood up, got very dizzy and collapsed, that she had to help him upstairs. And since that time, he has not been back downstairs. The officer asked Miss Clayton, you were outside, you were working outside? Lana says, I was mowing the lawn real quick, and when I came in, I fell down. I am so sorry. I tried to take a blanket underneath me, but I could not. Despite her training, Lana was unable to render aid to Steve. That is when she, I think, really panics because she knows she cannot do anything further to help him. And so she immediately ran out when she heard the motorcycle coming by to wave someone down to call 911. Nephew Nick French is on duty as a police officer when he gets the news. His mom called and she said, Uncle Steve died. And, just kind of disbelief. I mean, he knew it was for real, but, it did not really sink in. So he got down there as quick as he could. He just remembered the whole time going through his head was, how, why? The phone rang, and Rosie saw that it was her nephew calling. He said, Uncle Steve died, Uncle Steve died. That was not possible. It was not possible. How could he be gone? No, Rosie cannot believe it. With Rosie 700 miles away, Nick and his family rally around Lana. He felt awful because he knew she loved Uncle Steve, and he just kept thinking, I am upset right now, but I cannot imagine what she is going through to find her husband on the ground like this. Lana fears Steve's vertigo could have caused a fall down the stairs. She kept saying that, I think he fell down the stairs, and that is horrible, and I hope he did not. Sergeant Day checks for any signs that Steve may have been attacked. This looked like it was probably a natural death, but you never know. So Sergeant Day does at that point go upstairs to look to see what has happened. That would be a little unnerving to just go through a labyrinth of a house that you had never seen before, because you never know what could be around the corner. You can tell that there does not appear to be a sign of struggle. No other signs of someone else being up there having done something to him. Nothing significant at all. In the master bedroom, the bed sheet is all rumpled up, but nothing to suggest Steve had any kind of struggle. It looks as if the cause of death will not be a mystery for the coroner. The coroner cannot see any contusions or bruises. Nothing suggests Steve fell down the staircase. The officer asks so she put the floor under him. The other responds, yeah. She tried to move it. It looks as though Steve made it to the bottom of the stairs and then collapsed. The coroner said, I believe he had a heart attack. And the nephew said, what leads you to that opinion? And she said, well, the coloration of his face. There was blueness that went across the top of the chest, almost in a line. And that oftentimes, according to the coroner, is an indication that he may have had a heart attack. Back in the living room, Sergeant Day tells Lana what they think has happened. When I walked to the top of the stairs, I noticed that the carpet on the staircase kind of has a direction to it. So, I can see footprints. I think he may have come to the bottom of the staircase. Don't dwell on the staircase because I know that is a hard claim to make. I do not know how he made it. I do not know what he was thinking. I think this was the day God chose. Lana says that is what I told him. While Lana digests the news, Nick and his family help with cleaning up. We wanted to make the house still comfortable enough for her. We knew she was going to be exhausted, and she had to spend the night there. But they are shocked at what they find in the bedroom. When they went upstairs, Nick immediately noticed a smell. It was a smell of human filth. Excrement, urine. So they looked around, and there were huge urine discoloration spots in the middle of the bed. The soiled mattress raises some questions. So he is thinking the amount of urine that it would take to soak through this mattress. Steve had been going to the bathroom in this bed for days. So they immediately thought we have to get this mattress out of the room. They could barely pick it up. It was extremely heavy. They took the mattress and they tossed it out of the house. When Rosie talked with Lana on the phone, she asks her, "How did Steve get so ill?" Lana answers hello. When Rosie spoke with Lana much later in that evening, she asked her what happened, and Lana said he had not been feeling well for a few days. And Rosie said, "Well, why didn't you call somebody? Why didn't you let somebody know?" And Lana said, "Chà, anh ấy đang bắt đầu cảm thấy tốt hơn." She says Steve never called because he had been sleeping heavily and misplaced his cell phone a week earlier. Lana claimed that it had been missing for several days. My brother was never, ever without his phone. He just was always attached to his phone. It went everywhere with him. It was at that point where Rosie really felt like something very sinister was going on, and she did not know what it was. Steve's sister Rosie asked his widow Lana about his will. Steve and Rosie had talked many times about what it was that he wanted to do when that time came, and he wanted to be buried in that beautiful cemetery in Fort Lauderdale. When Rosie asked Lana, she said there is no will. Lana has already made the arrangements. Steve is due to be cremated, and she is planning his memorial. On August 4th, 2018, Lana holds a service for Steve at their home. It was highly emotional. Everybody there felt such a deep connection to Steve. It was just hard to stay calm. Even though it was supposed to be a celebration of his life, it just could not help but feel the deep, deep sorrow that everybody felt. If there is any space that it is okay to be sad and to cry a little bit, this is that time. And people think that it is okay today that they celebrate life well lived and at the same time be sad. At the memorial, Rosie and the family are surprised to find Lana has already started to clear out Steve's belongings. She had already began taking all of his clothes, all of his personal items, and she donated them all to the VA. Rosie was almost knocked off her feet to see the number of hangers, empty hangers in that closet, with not a single stitch of clothes. A lot of watches missing, a lot of jewelry missing. His wedding ring was missing. And Lana's claims about Steve not having will raise his further suspicions. That is something that Steve and Rosie and Steve and many other people had discussed, was how important it was to make sure that everything was in order. There is absolutely no logic in my brother, an accountant, a person who is meticulous with his finances, not having a will. The family feel like something is not adding up. We are all on the same page here. We know something is going on. And that was when they called the medical examiner's office and said, "Hey, please do an autopsy. And at the very least, if you're not going to do that, do a toxicology." And they agreed to it. Detective Motes of the York County Sheriff's Office is also notified of the family's suspicions about Steve's death. The detective says good morning, everybody. But when the autopsy report comes in, it lists signs of heart disease and points to death by natural causes. The detective says, yes, thank you. The initial autopsy still shows that it is likely a heart attack, but they have to wait for the toxicologist's report to come back to finally make an actual finding. It will take a few weeks before those results arrive. So the family waited on pins and needles for the truth to come out. They just knew that there was something was very wrong. The detective says thank you. When the toxicology report on Steve Clayton's blood comes back, it is shocking. It shows traces of several sedatives, including marijuana, temazepam, and Benadryl. But that is not all. The biggest shock in the toxicology results was tetrahydrozoline, also known as THC. It is the active ingredient in eye drops like Visine, Murine, or other over-the-counter eye drops. THC is not ever meant to be ingested. Given in small doses, it makes you feel very ill. It makes you nauseous. It makes you dizzy. It will make you pass out eventually. But in large quantities, it is deadly. It shuts your central nervous system down, and it will kill you. The detectives learned that THC can limit the blood supply to vital organs, leading to a heart attack. When the body goes up there, the Visine you see is on the tall dresser that is away from the bed. That is where he cannot get up to get the Visine. You have to be kidding me. Now, it is very clear this is not a natural death. Detective Motes needs to have a talk with Lana Clayton. 5 weeks after the sudden death of her husband, Lana Clayton is questioned by detectives. The detective says, if you were a witness in this case for us. The detectives want to know more about the medications found in Steve's blood. They ask what he would say. He took Benadryl. It is a long list. But there is no mention of THC, the drug that killed Steve. It is colorless, it is odorless, and it is tasteless, which makes it the perfect thing to give to someone if you want to poison them. The level of THC in Steve's blood was so high that it was clear that it was the cause of death. It is a lethal level, no matter what way you look at it. The detectives press on. They say somehow or another there was a large amount of Izine in his system. So that is what we are trying to get to the bottom of. What do you know about it? Lana asks what I know about it. I know it makes you have diarrhea. There are basically 2 things that the police are now considering. 1, he is poisoned. There is foul play. 2, he ingested it on his own, whether it was intentional or unintentional. But as police probe Steve and Lana's relationship, the detective asks, how has your life been? Lana claims sometimes we would have fun and everything. And then sometimes I would be on eggshells. All the time I was on eggshells. Lana claims that Steve had a dark side. She says he can be really nasty. The detective asks, what does nasty Steve look like? Lana answers he is really verbally abusive, calling me names. The detective asks, what would he call you? Lana says, I do not know. Stupid. Bitch, I do not know. Just all kinds of things. I could see it escalating until you notice. Just, try and stay out his way. After Lana's interview, detectives order a search of the house. They are looking for cups or glasses that have a residue in them. They are looking for anything they can find that helps them determine what could have caused this. Anything document-wise that would show trouble in the marriage. But during that time, Lana tells the officer that she wants to speak again with Detective Moats. Detective Moats records what Lana has to say. Lana says, I told you a little bit about Stephen, that it was worse than what I told you. He was verbally and physically abusive. And yell at me and call me names. His anger built up. I would do something that would irritate him until the point where he would explode. Okay. Lana says after he had that incident, which he said it was vertigo, and I was taking care of him and everything, but I was still so angry, and my girlfriend at work told me you want to get even with someone, put Visine in a drink, it will cause diarrhea. It is then that Lana drops a bombshell. She says, when I saw that Visine on the table, it just came back to me, and I just took and squirted it. The detective asks, and what did you squirt it into? Lana answers as water. The detective asks into his water. So you do not know the full amount. I mean, you just squeezed. Lana says, I think I put the whole thing in. The detective asks, so the whole bottle? Lana says, I think I did. I squeezed it hard. I just saw it there and I just did it. The detective asks, what are your plans tonight now? Lana says, just stay here. The detective says, you'll be okay. I know it is a lot on your plate. Lana asks just what if I do? What if I cause his death with the Visine? The detective asks, anything else that you want to add? Lana says no. The detective says if there is more, get it off your chest. Lana says that is it. It is a damning confession. But the detectives cannot arrest Lana just yet. After Lana confessed, the police left. They got their ducks in a row as far as what charges would be made. And they were ready to come back the next day to arrest Lana Clayton. But early that morning, they get a call from one of Lana's neighbors. They found notes of suicide. They are afraid that she has harmed herself. She knew the police were coming back the next day, and she knew they would have warrants for arrest. She turned the gas on and went upstairs and took some pills to kill herself. They find her unconscious in her bed. She is taken into the hospital where she is treated and ultimately released, and then immediately arrested on the charges of murder and tampering with food items. The family is informed of Lana's arrest. A detective from York County called Nick and said, hey, Nick, I just want to bring you up to speed here. Lana confessed. And Nick pulled over right away. It hit him like a ton of bricks, literally like a baseball bat to the face. Steve's close friend answered the phone. and Rosie was on the other end screaming that she killed him. On January 16th, 2020, Lana accepts a plea deal and admits guilt on charges of voluntary manslaughter and tampering with a drug or food product. The original indictment was for murder. The judge states you are pleading to a lesser offense, voluntary manslaughter. Lana states my own knowledge of this was by watching movies and the cause of discomfort and diarrhea. Lana insists she never intended for Steve to die and just wanted revenge for his abuse. But his friends and family do not buy that Steve was ever abusive. She tries to assassinate Steve's character because other people who knew him and who he had mentored came forward to say he was a wonderful person. There was no abuse of any sort with Steven. She was trying to do whatever she could to save herself from a very, very, very long sentence and possibly the death penalty. But he was a gentle soul, not capable of harming someone. Based on the toxicology report, the prosecutors believe Steve suffered for 3 days before dying. Lana tells us that the fatal dose was on Thursday morning. But we know as a matter of scientific fact from the toxicologist that is impossible. He would have died Thursday morning if he had ingested that Thursday morning. For him to have been sick all of that time, it indicates that she continually gave him medication throughout that time, poisoned him with Visine little by little. And Lana, a nurse, never sought to help him after the initial poisoning. Stephen would not have stayed in a urine-soaked mattress. He was a clean freak. He would not have stood for such a thing. He is too weak to get up and move. There is no phone in the house. There is no landline, so he cannot call somebody. So this puts him in the situation of being tortured with no way to get help. I tell you. And so finally she knew Saturday, that is it. And she squeezed a whole bottle of Visine into his water, had him drink it, and then goes out to mow the grass. So she did not have to watch the horror of his death. Instead of a nurse that helps, she is the nurse from hell. 53-year-old Lana Clayton is sentenced to 25 years in prison. She never admitted that she intended to kill Steve, but the facts show otherwise. The friend feels like there is no penalty that would have been great enough for Lana. This is 3 days of methodically poisoning my best friend and then killing him. The thought process that had to go into her putting on this charade. And she carried that right on through till the end. And the friend thinks that is the definition of a monster. But Lana almost got away with it. There almost was not an autopsy. If there had not been an autopsy, the ruling of the coroner would have been this was likely a heart episode, and it was natural causes. The truth is she did this to herself, you know. Had she been just the same quiet, gentle Lana, grieving the loss of Steve, no one would have had any suspicion whatsoever. Although Lana insists Steve's death was unintentional. His family and the prosecution believe it was a deliberate act motivated by financial gain. One obvious and glaring motive is Steve's wealth. Without a will in the state of South Carolina, everything goes to the spouse. So Lana would know if Steve is gone, I get everything. If somebody wanted to do something malicious like this, all they had to do was get rid of the will, and everything belonged to them. The family tried to move on without Steve in their lives. The old greetings still echo. I mean, the friend misses a lot about Steve, but he misses his voice. He misses hearing his voice. This is my way of, getting away from the emotional stuff. The nephew thinks what he misses about Steve is his over-the-top personality. This big, boisterous, gregarious character that enters a room and just takes over everything. Steve was an amazing person. It has been difficult not having him around. The thing his sister misses the most about Steve is his laughter and his ability to light up a room. Stephen was stolen from everyone who loved him. Stephen was stolen from everyone who loved him. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most foolish reasons you could possibly imagine. They call it love. They call it betrayal. But I tell you, it is nothing but absolute, ignorant selfishness disguised as a shadow of the past. This case truly began long before the gunfire echoed on that summer night in Linden, Utah, a small, quiet community where folks always believed evil was something that only happened on the television. But my instincts in 20 years of looking at corpses tell me a cold, hard truth. You just never know in a small community? What evil lurks just right next door to you? Let us look at Joy Lee, a strong, resilient woman, a mother, and a grandmother who spent 30 years of her life carrying the entire weight of her family on her shoulders. She met Fred Lee in high school when she was just 14 and he was 18, married him in October 1976, and brought children into this world. But life has a way of shattering the most perfect plans. In 1981, Fred fell about 30 feet from the top of a scaffolding while building a water tank. He suffered severe brain damage, fell into a coma for a month, and returned as a completely different man. He became prone to confusion, experienced severe mood swings, and would stay up in his garage for 2 or 3 nights with no sleep, only to crash for days and wake up angry, wanted to break things. He abused his medication to get a high, and he could not hold down a job. Joy was left to pick up the slack. She started working rolling hot dogs just to pay the bills, then trained up as an X-ray technologist in 1986, and eventually started her own ultrasound business in 1994 to support her 3 daughters and her impaired husband. Fred was not a strict stay-at-home dad. He let the girls get away with basically whatever they wanted. Growing up without discipline, all 3 daughters ended up acting out, experimenting with drugs, and having run-ins with the law. By November 2005, after decades of holding everything together, Joy reached her breaking point. She finally filed for divorce. Fred was shocked. He thought everything was wonderful and that she would stay forever to clean his house, cook his meals, and pay his bills. My, the delusion of a dependent mind is always the breeding ground for a deadly obsession. They settled the separation. He kept the house, and she took a nearby lot of land inherited from his father to build townhouses, seeking her own second shot at happiness. At that construction site, she befriended a plumber named Mike Sidwell, or Sid to his friends. He was 13 years younger than Joy, but he was funny, cute, and full of life. He called her his sunshine, his little bundle of joy. By the spring of 2006, they were inseparable. In February of 2011, Mike got down on his knee in the kitchen and asked her to marry him. They tied the knot on April 30, 2011. It was a beautiful, fun wedding. They even took permanent custody of Joy's granddaughter, little Naya, because the child's mother, Amanda, was in and out of jail on drug charges. Mike embraced a second chance at fatherhood, getting up with Naya in the middle of the night when she was sick and loving her like his own. It was a stable, happy home. But to Fred Lee, his ex-wife's happiness was an insult to his own misery. He became obsessed. He began stalking Joy on purpose because he knew it scared her, and he thought it was funny. He bought a Mach 1 car and literally wrote stalker on the back of it. He showed up at her bank, forcing the bank president to walk her out the back door, and he even tried to take Naya from the car. Joy had to get protective order against him, but she refused to let his malice ruin her new life. Let us move the clock to Thursday, July 3rd, 2014. It was the start of holiday weekend, a day meant for swimming pools, barbecues, and fireworks. Joy's daughter, Jessica, who was out of prison, asked to take 5-year-old Naya for the day. Joy agreed, but strictly warned her not to take Naya around Fred. But Jessica felt misplaced sympathy for her father. She lied to her mother and secretly took Naya to spend time with Fred that afternoon, later calling Joy to ask if Naya could stay out a little longer. Joy had a business appointment at 7:30 that evening, so they agreed Jessica would drop Naya off with Mike later. Joy left, leaving Mike home alone, blowing up a pool, waiting to be that good dad for the little girl. At 8:15 that evening, Joy received a phone call from her grandson, Riley, who had just dropped Naya off with Jessica. Riley said words that turned Joy's blood to ice. "We just dropped Naya off, and we seen Fred hiding behind the van. Are you sure it was him?" Joy asked. She immediately slammed on the brakes, turned her car around, and drove 100 miles per hour down the freeway with her flashers on, frantically calling Mike. He did not answer. At the exact same time, 911 dispatchers were flooded with calls from neighbors. An active shooter was on the loose. Fred Lee had marched onto the property armed with a 12-gauge shotgun and a 9mm handgun. He smashed the door in. Mike Sidwell, that good, decent man, stood his ground at the front door to protect a 5-year-old child. Fred fired once, and then he shot a second time. Mike dropped to the ground, killed instantly in his own home. Fred did this right in front of little Naya, a child who, less than half an hour prior, had been sitting in his own house. Think about the sheer evil of that psychology. A grandfather willing to destroy the psyche of a 5-year-old girl just to satisfy his monstrous rage. Leaving Mike's body behind, Fred went upstairs on a rampage, determined to find Joy. With Joy not there, Naya seized her chance. She ran out the front door and fled to a neighbor's house for safety. Failing to find his ex-wife, Fred walked outside and began shooting wildly at the other condos, eventually confronting a neighbor named Ron Navy, proudly declaring his name was Fred Lee. When heavily armed police officers swarmed the complex, Fred emerged around a corner wearing coveralls. He kept yelling at the officers to kill him and reached his hand inside his clothes. The officers paused for a mere millisecond, an intuition that saved Fred's life, and did not pull their triggers when his hand came out empty. Jay went to the ground and was handcuffed. Joy arrived back at 9 o'clock to find her home transformed into a horrific crime scene. They told her Mike was dead and Naya was missing. The terror of a grandmother in that moment is beyond words. But then, across the street, the brave 5-year-old girl emerged from a neighbor's house and clung to Joy. Naya looked at her and described exactly what her grandpa did. She pointed with her left hand and said that Fred had shots in the nose, and the bullet was right there. You have to be kidding me. That kind of irreparable psychological trauma is a scar that never goes away. Inside the interrogation room, Fred Lee sat completely calm and collected. He told his story easily, almost proud of what he had done. He detailed how he pushed the door in, saw Mike, shot once, and then shot a second time until he dropped. He never expressed a single ounce of sorrow for taking a life or trying to take Joy's. All he could say was that he wished Joy, Nickwisha, and Tone, despite their love, found that life pulled them in different directions. Being young and feeling invincible, they eventually drifted apart. A few years after the birthday video was recorded, they amicably split. They no longer had the same interests, and they went their separate ways. By 1999, Nickwisha began college in Atlanta, and so great-grandmother Mary and grandmother Gail agreed to take care of Keontae full-time. It was not a difficult decision, as the bond between the little girl and her great-grandmother was profound. By the mid-2000s, Newburgh had become one of the cities with the highest crime rates in America. Grandmother Mary made the difficult, heart-wrenching decision to move Keontae to the safety of her hometown, Phoenix City, Alabama. It was a hard pill to swallow, but deep down, they knew it was the best path forward to provide her with a better quality of life. Moving to Alabama was a drastic change, like night and day. Where there had once been urban sprawl, there were now forests, trees, and the occasional deer grazing in the front yard. Thanksgiving 2006. 12-year-old Keontae Chavis and her family were reunited at her grandmother Mary's house. Mary, with her glasses perched on her nose, sat with her son, Daryl. Now settled in Phoenix City, Keontae was closer than ever to her second cousin, Courtney. Courtney, standing there in red with her daughter, Lexi, was technically a cousin, but that word did not seem sufficient to describe the closeness they shared. She was more like an aunt, a guiding light, and a confidant. Out in the yard, Keontae, who was growing tall by the day, braved the cold with her cousin Todd, who wore a striped shirt, and his brother, Tyson. She loved basketball. It had started after she watched the movie Space Jam over and over again, obsessed with the energy of the game. Man, she would shiver with excitement just thinking about it. She could certainly hold her own on the court, and her family was proud because she truly knew how to handle the ball. Keontae could be a shy child, but when she was surrounded by family or on the basketball court, her true personality shone through. She was quiet, but she possessed a massive magnetic presence. Keontae poured her passion into practice and joined the team at her high school. She harbored dreams of going to college on a basketball scholarship, but the end of the basketball season brought a devastating twist of fate. Keontae sustained a severe injury while playing. She fell on her leg and damaged her knee, and after that, she was forced to stop playing. In a split second, her dreams of being a basketball star were shattered. It was incredibly painful for her family to witness. Seeing her lose the one thing she was most passionate about, her confidence wavered in the wake of the injury. 2007, in Atlanta, Georgia. It was a preschool graduation of Keontae's cousin, Aya. Keontae was there, and her mother, Courtney, was ready to take a photograph of the big moment. Aya was only 6, and Keontae was there to show her support. She seemed to take a genuine interest in helping Aya, especially when she was feeling sick. As a straight-A student, Keontae was a significant inspiration for Aya. She was motivated and driven, focused on the goal of getting an education and achieving great things. Since her injury, Keontae had put basketball behind her and began looking for other horizons. She had many aspirations. She wanted to be a veterinarian, a model, or perhaps a rapper. Her interests were vast and varied. 2010. 16-year-old Keontae was now a freshman at Central High School. She had grown closer to her cousin, Christian Grissom Jr., known to the family as Little Chris, who had recently been spending more time in Alabama. They had been close as children, with him and his sisters often staying at Grandma Mary's house. They were cousins, but in their family, a cousin was almost like a brother or sister. Keontae and Christian shared a good friendship. They got along well, and they often spent time joking around with one another. He had a partner and 3 children in Florida, but he wanted to split his time between them and his family in Alabama. After all, he was one of Grandma Mary's favorite grandchildren, just as Keontae had always struggled with a natural shyness. Little Chris had faced his own self-esteem issues. He had always been a bit chubby, a little boy who sometimes cried because he had bottled up emotions he did not know how to channel. But Keontae and Little Chris soon discovered a shared interest that helped them break out of their shells. Chris was into hip-hop, constantly rhyming and practicing his flow. Keontae was impressed. He even had a stage name, Thirst Mega. Encouraged by Little Chris, Keontae challenged her shyness and developed her own passion for rap. Her rap name was Wonderflow, a play on the word wonderful. She wrote her own music and recorded a copy for her uncle, Klika, who also used the rap. Keontae sent him an email and asked him to check it out. He was stunned. He knew her as a quiet girl, so he had no idea she could rap. But for Keontae, rap was merely a hobby. After graduating, she decided to follow in her uncle's footsteps and join the Air Force. She had always spoken of her desire to take care of her family, and that was one of the primary reasons she wanted to join the military. In August 2014, she passed the first Air Force written test with flying colors. She scored very high, and at that point in time, her family believed she could have done anything she set her mind to. Things in her personal life were going well, too. Keontae had a boyfriend named Trey. Her mother met him a few times and thought he seemed like a kind person. Keontae told her mother that one day she would love to get married and have plenty of children. When her mother asked who would take care of all those children, Keontae had laughed and said, "You and Mommy." August 6th, at 6:30 in the evening, Nickwisher received a phone call from Keontae. She was excited, explaining that she had a job interview the following morning at Sam's Club. When she spoke about the interview, she was eager and looking forward to it. Her mother thought it was fantastic, a source of income that would support her until she joined the Air Force. Her mother ended the conversation by wishing her good luck and promising to call the next morning to help her prepare. The next morning, Nickwisha called her mother Gail's house, where Keontae had been staying. Keontae was not there. Many thoughts raced through her mind because she knew her daughter was usually home at that time of the morning. She called several times, but her phone went straight to voicemail. She called Sam's Club and asked to speak with the manager, asking if they had an interview scheduled for Keontae. The manager confirmed that she had an interview, but she never showed up. It was unlike Keontae to miss an opportunity she was looking forward to. Upon hearing this, her mother became frightened, knowing in her gut that something was wrong. By 12 in the afternoon on August 7th, the 19-year-old's silence had become deeply worrying. Her mother was still in Atlanta, desperately trying to figure out what was happening, call her phone over and over to see why she was not answering. The last person to have heard from Keontae was her grandmother, Gail. That night, Keontae's car had broken down somewhere near Phoenix City. She had called the house to let her grandmother know. That day, her cousin, little Chris, had arrived from Florida for a visit. Since he was already out, Gail had asked him to pick Keontae up, but neither the grandmother nor little Chris had heard from Keontae since the early hours, after little Chris had allegedly dropped her off at her boyfriend Trey's house. The family headed to the local police station to report her missing, but despite their pleas, the police insisted there was little they could do as she had been missing for less than 24 hours. Typically, the police reasoned, when someone was reported missing, they had just gone off with friends or did not want to be found. But the family was distraught. Nick Wisha called Keontae's father, Tone. When he heard that his daughter was not answering her phone, he felt a surge of dread. He caught a plane to Atlanta immediately. Once they arrived in Alabama, the Grissom family met them at Mary's house, and they began circling the block, asking people if they had seen her, and putting up missing person flyers. After 2 days without contact, Grandmother Gail returned to the police station. She recounted the events. Keontae's car had broken down, and her cousin Christian had gone to help her. Little Chris had told Gail that they had gone to a gathering at Keontae's boyfriend's house. Later, he claimed, they left together to get something to eat, and then he dropped Keontae back at the boyfriend house at 1:32 in the morning before going home himself. Concerned, Gail called Trey, the boyfriend. She asked if Keontae was at his house. He said no. She relayed what little Chris had told her, that he had dropped her off there. Trey insisted that Keontae never came back to his house after leaving early that evening. He said the last time he saw her was around 8 or 9 in the evening. But only a few hours later, at 5:29 in the evening, the Russell County Sheriff's Office received a call from a family driving down a remote dirt track in Seal, Alabama. The passenger had observed what she thought was a body lying on the side of the road and immediately called 911. Investigators rushed to the remote dirt track in Seal, Alabama, where a body had been discovered. Chief Investigator Lieutenant Harold Smith was dispatched to the scene. When he arrived on Ridge Road, the crime scene tape was already up. He knew immediately when he looked at the body that it was Keontae. She had been there for a little while, and there were signs of decomposition. Forensic officers estimated she died sometime between 3 and 4 in the morning on August 7th. She had suffered blunt force trauma to the head and appeared to have been strangled. Her clothing led investigators to initially suspect sexual assault, but there was no forensic evidence to support the theory. There was no way of knowing, and the investigator could not prove it. By 7 in the evening, 2 hours after her body was located, officers broke the devastating news to the family. They were told to come to the police station, where the head sheriff announced that Keontae was not coming home. It felt like a physical blow, the sensation of numbness and anger. The family was called in to identify the body, but they were advised against letting her mother see her daughter like that, as it would haunt her forever. So Grandma Mary and Grandmother Gail went to view her, confirming the family's worst fears. Keontae was gone. It was late at night on August 9th when investigators interviewed the family and friends in what was now officially a homicide investigation. Little Chris was already on his way back to his family in Florida. While detectives tried to reach him, they spoke to Keontae's great-uncle, Darrell. He confirmed that Keontae had not come home that night, and that little Chris had said he dropped her off somewhere. Investigators also spoke to Keontae's cousin, Todd Tolliver, who had spoken with Christian on the telephone. Todd walked the police through the night as Christian had described it. He was at Trey's house. They left around 9:30 to get food at Burger King, and then they went to a liquor store. Investigators requested the closed-circuit television footage from the liquor store to confirm this. On the night of August 6th, just before 11 in the evening, they got a hit. The footage showed Christian's vehicle pulling up. Christian got out and went into the liquor store, and Keontae followed him inside. Christian bought a couple of items. Everything appeared normal between them. She did not appear to be stressed, and it seemed they were having a normal night. Back in the interview rooms, another potential suspect was under the spotlight. Little Chris had told investigators that Keontae asked him to take her back to Trey's house. Because many cases of this nature turn out to be domestic violence between partners, the police focused on Trey. Grandmother Gail's boyfriend also highlighted his suspicions about him. On August 10th, police were dispatched to Trey's house. They discovered he lived with his cousin, Garrett, who was also at the house the night Keontae disappeared. When they spoke to Trey, he said he came home from work at 6:30 or 7 in the evening and saw Keontae and Christian in the yard. He spoke to them, but then he had to go back to work. Garrett confirmed this, saying he had seen Keontae and Christian at the house during that time. Garrett said Keontae and Christian were going to get food, then go to the liquor store, and then return. They left around 9:30 in the evening. Throughout the night, Garrett claimed he was on the porch waiting for them, but neither arrived. Garrett was wearing an ankle monitor because of previous run-ins with the law, and the global positioning system data confirmed he was at the house during the time of Keontae's death. With Trey's alibi solid, the investigators felt confident he was not involved. All leads pointed back to the moment little Chris claimed he dropped her at Trey's house. Either something happened before she made it there, or little Chris was lying. When the Russell County Sheriff's Office obtained little Chris's phone records, what they discovered blew the case wide open. His cell phone had pinged off a cell tower 0.95 miles from the location of the body. The ping was recorded at approximately 3 in the morning on August 7th. That meant he had to be extremely close to Keontae's body on Ridge Road. Police drone footage showed a remote, rural expanse. There was no place in the city that would have hit that tower. That indicated to the investigators that he was purposefully on that road, placing a cell phone in the vicinity of the body. It was a huge step for the investigation. They felt they had their man. Little Chris was nowhere to be found. On August 11, 2014, in Platteville, New York, the police arrived at the home of Christian Grissom's mother. Little Chris was not back in Florida. He was at his mother's house. Keontae's Newburgh relatives were there to confront him. When the police arrived, they put little Chris in cuffs, arrested him, and impounded his vehicle. Lieutenant Harold Smith was dispatched to drive to New York with the arrest warrant. Detectives took little Chris to the station, but he asked for a lawyer before they could get him into the interrogation room. However, they looked for signs of a struggle. They were able to see a bite mark on his chest, a plain, visible bite mark. Perhaps Keontae had bitten him in an effort to defend herself. In a recorded phone call, Christian was heard asking if the police could hear him. He said he was all right for now, and that they had taken pictures of his hands and chest. He mentioned a bruise and a bite mark, but he claimed the bite mark was old. The police, however, were able to speak with his girlfriend in Florida. She emphatically stated that when he left Florida, he did not have any bite marks of any kind on his chest. That same afternoon, Lieutenant Harold Smith arrived at the Platteville Police Department. They executed a search warrant on Christian's vehicle and quickly found a blood smear on the headliner, near the dome light. They cut that piece of material out and submitted it to the Alabama Department of Forensic Science. The results confirmed their suspicions. It was the blood of Keontae. It was the final piece of evidence they needed, and little Chris was charged with the murder of his own cousin. It was hard for the family to live with the fact that the betrayal came from within their own circle. The motive remained a mystery. Why did he do it? What could she have done so wrong to make him take her life? Some family members theorized he may have been attracted to her and tried something that was rejected, leading him to lose control when she threatened to tell the family. At his trial on August 28, 2017, little Chris maintained his innocence. The prosecutors laid out their theory. After leaving Trey's house, he took her to the liquor store, then drove around the area, eventually ending up on that lonely, remote dirt road where they got into a fight. The fight occurred right where the body was left. It was likely she fought back, but she was unable to overpower him. He strangled her, hit her in her face, and bludgeoned her to death. He then dumped her body on the side of the road and drove to Gail's house. The jury was out for 30 to 40 minutes before returning with a guilty verdict. Christian Grissom Jr. was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life without parole. To the family, his actions showed he was a sociopath who cared for nothing but himself. He was a monster, and he was exactly where he belonged. For the family, it was a cruel pill to swallow. They continue to ask if this really happened to them, this family, in this way. They realize that the predators who can harm your family are not always on the outside. Sometimes they are in your family core, lurking and waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. On the 6th anniversary of her death, Keontae's family reunited to release balloons in her memory. They wanted people to remember Keontae, her warm spirit, and to keep that in their hearts. They remembered the saying they put on their shirts for a funeral. Heaven could not wait for you. They counted down together, 1, 2, 3, and let the balloons go. They loved her, and they knew they had to let it go. They had to move forward because Keontae would not want to see them upset. She would want them to live the best life they could. And when the day came for them to descend into the afterlife, they knew they would see her again. This concludes the story of Keontae Chavez. It is a narrative of profound loss, but also of deep love and an enduring hope that even in the face of the darkest betrayal, the human spirit and the memories we hold dear can persevere. May her story serve as a reminder to cherish our loved ones and to always remain aware of the fragility and beauty of the time we are given together. This is a story of a young girl with big dreams, a girl who could have done anything she set her mind to if the world had offered her the time she deserved. We remember her not just for how she was taken, but for the light she brought into every room, for the way she navigated a world of complex family dynamics, and for the indelible mark she left on the hearts of those who loved her most. This is a chronicle of a life, a family, an enduring power of memory. The air in Newburgh, New York, on that day in November, in the year 1995, was crisp with the promise of change. It was a day of celebration, the very first birthday of Keontae Chavez. The party was held at the home of Grandma Mary, a place that served as the heartbeat of family. The house was filled with the sounds of laughter, the scent of home-cooked food, and the soft, excited hum of a family gathering to welcome a new life into their collective embrace. Keontae, who was just 1 year old, found the attention overwhelming. She was a little camera shy, her small hands clutching at her father, Tone, for comfort. Tone, a young man who viewed every moment with his daughter as a precious treasure, adjusted his glasses. He was determined to record these moments, to capture the ephemeral beauty of his daughter growing up. He knew that one day these recordings would be all they had to look back on, though he could not have known how vital those memories would eventually become. The early days of Keontae as a baby were nothing short of a marvel to her father. Every day felt like a new discovery, a new page in a book that was being written in real time. Watching her grow, hearing her attempt to say things, observing her as she began to explore the world, it was a source of profound pride for him. She was already trying to understand the world around her, peering at things with a curiosity that hinted at the intelligent, determined young woman she would become. As the family sang the birthday song, little Keontae began to warm up to the attention. Her mother, Nickwisha Grissom, who was 17 years old at the time, held her close. The 90s in Newburgh were a time of great upheaval. The city was navigating the difficult waters of an economic crisis, the crack epidemic, and a surge in unemployment. It was a city caught in the throes of a struggle, yet within the walls of Grandma Mary's house, there was a sanctuary of love. Nickwisha and Tone had met back in the year 1993. Young love, at that age, felt like enough to conquer the world. Tone was drawn to her personality, her style, and her warmth, while Nickwisha saw in Tone a charming young man with a spark of ambition. When they discovered they were expecting a child, they were naturally nervous. The weight of the responsibility loomed large, yet the joy of bringing Kiani into the world transformed them both. For Tone, becoming a father gave him a purpose he had never felt before. The celebration continued with the cutting of the cake by the godmother, Fika. The family joker, Uncle Darrell, could not resist teasing the toddler, suggesting that Chianti, the nickname they used for her, should not have to wait for a taste. After the candles were extinguished and the cake was served, Tone settled into the quiet satisfaction of playing the role of father. He spent the evening with the simple, endearing task of unscrewing the intricate, child-proof battery compartments of her new toys, a small, fatherly ritual that made him feel connected to her in a tangible way. Grandma Mary was a matriarch of the family, a woman of deep passion, kindness, and unyielding strength. She was a person everyone turned to when life became overwhelming. She was the enforcer, the judge, and the moral compass. Whatever Grandma Mary said was the law, and in her house, under her watchful eye, the family found structure and safety. As time passed, the lives of Tone and Nickwisha diverged. They had met young, and as they grew, their paths took them in different directions. The split was amicable, a mutual understanding that their journeys were no longer aligned. By the year 1999, Nickwisha began her college education in Atlanta. It was a time of transition, and it was decided that Grandma Mary and Grandmother Gail would take on the responsibility of raising Chianti. It was a choice made from love, ensuring that Chianti remained surrounded by the stability of the people who adored her most. By the mid-2000s, the environment in Newburgh had shifted, and the crime rates began to climb, making the city a less than ideal place for a young girl to grow up. Grandma Mary made the difficult, heart-wrenching decision to move Chianti to the safety of her hometown, Phoenix City, Alabama. It was a departure that felt like moving between two different worlds. In Alabama, the horizon opened up, filled with forests and quiet country roads, a stark contrast to the urban landscape of New York. Thanksgiving in the year 2006 brought the family together once more at Grandma Mary's house. Chianti, now 12 years old, was growing taller by the day. She was closer than ever to her second cousin, Courtney, who felt more like an aunt than a cousin. Out in the yard, Chianti braved the cold air, playing with her cousins, Todd and Tyson. She had developed a deep, abiding love for basketball, a passion ignited by the movie Space Jam. She would watch it over and over, mesmerized by the sport. She was quiet, yet on the court, she held her own, possessing a presence that commanded respect. Chianti was a young woman of many dreams. She excelled in school, a straight-A student who understood the value of education. But life often brings unexpected turns. During her high school years, she sustained a knee injury while playing basketball. The dream of competing on the court was abruptly silenced. It was a devastating blow for a young girl who found so much of her identity in the sport. However, Chianti was resilient. She began to look for new avenues for her ambition. She talked about becoming a veterinarian, a model, or even a rapper. She was a girl of vast potential. By the year 2010, 16-year-old Chianti was a freshman at Central High School. She had grown close to her cousin, Christian Grissom Jr., known to the family as Little Chris. Little Chris had his own struggles with self-esteem, often feeling like an outsider, but he and Chianti bonded over a shared love for hip-hop. He would rhyme, and she would write, adopting the rap name Wonderflow. It was a side of her that surprised everyone. The quiet girl had a voice, and she was learning how to use it. Keontae set her sights on the Air Force, determined to build a future for herself and to help support her family. In August of 2014, she passed her first written test with impressive scores. She was on the cusp of adulthood, a young woman with a clear vision of her future. Her personal life, too, seemed to be moving in a positive direction. She had a boyfriend, Trit, whom she spoke with affection, and she shared dreams of one day having a family of her own. On the evening of August the 6th, in the year 2014, Nikwisha received a phone call from Keontae. She was excited about a job interview the next morning at a local store. She was looking forward to the future, to the income that would help her until she could join the military. Nikwisha wished her good luck, promising to call the next morning to help her prepare. The next morning, the silence was deafening. Nikwisha called the house, but Keontae was not there. She called the store, only to learn that Keontae had never arrived for her interview. Panic began to settle in, a cold and terrifying realization that something was deeply wrong. The family searched, they reached out, but the silence remained unbroken. The investigation that followed was a harrowing journey through the dark reality of a life cut short. The police were initially skeptical, as is often the case when a young person goes missing, but the family knew the truth in their hearts. They knew Keontae. They knew she would not have vanished on her own. As the authorities peeled back the layers of the days leading up to her disappearance, the story became one of betrayal. The person who had been trusted, the person who had offered to help her when her car broke down, was the very person who had turned against her. The investigation revealed the chilling details of that night. The drive, the stop at the liquor store, the lies about dropping her off at her boyfriend's house, and the tragic, senseless act that took her life. The discovery of her body in a remote, rural area in Seal, Alabama, shattered the family. The realization that the perpetrator was not an outsider, but someone from within their own circle, a family member, was a pain that defied words. The trial, held in August of 2017, brought the truth to light. The evidence, the timeline, and the heartbreaking betrayal painted a picture that no family should ever have to see. Keontae Chavez was more than the tragedy that ended her life. She was a daughter, a cousin, a student, a dreamer. She was a girl who loved the rhythm of music, who understood the importance of hard work, and who loved her family with a fierce and gentle heart. In the aftermath, the family chose to hold on to the light. On the anniversaries of her passing, they would release balloons, a simple gesture to remember the warmth of her spirit. They spoke of the lessons she left behind, the importance of checking on one another, of holding on to love even in the face of unspeakable loss. Her father, Tone, eventually found a way to carry the memory of his daughter with a sense of peace, knowing that the love they shared could never be erased. Her mother and her grandmother found the strength to move forward, not by forgetting, but by honoring her life in every action they took. The story of Keontae is a reminder that the bonds of family are both a source of infinite joy and, at times, the place where we must be most vigilant. It is a story that teaches us to value every moment, to listen to the dreams of the young, and to hold those we love close while we have the chance. Keontae did not get to live out the long life she imagined, but in the stories told by those who loved her, in the music she rapped, and in the love she inspired, she continues to exist. She remains a young girl with big dreams, the one who looked at the world with curiosity and hope. She remains a part of the tapestry of her family, a thread that, though cut short, continues to hold the design together. We remember her not for the darkness that came, but for the light that she carried, a light that, in the quietest moments, still shines bright. The legacy of Keontae is not one of anger, though the pain is real and deep. It is a legacy of resilience. It is a story of family that, having faced the absolute worst, chose to stand together. They chose to remember the birthday parties, the games of basketball, the songs and the laughter. They chose to define her not by the final, tragic moment, but by the 19 years of life she lived so fully. And as the years go by, the world moves on, But for those who knew her, the memory of Keontae remains a constant. She is the girl who had gone to the Air Force, who would have traveled, who would have made a difference. And in the hearts of her parents, her cousins, and all those who hold her name in their thoughts, she has already made a difference. She taught them about the fragility of life and the immense power of love. This is the story of Keontae Chavez, a life that reminds us all to cherish the people who make our world feel like a home. It is a story of a young girl who, in her own way, taught the world that even when the light is extinguished, the warmth remains, glowing softly in the hearts of those who keep the memory alive. And in that, there is hope and there is peace, and there is the enduring strength of a family that will never stop loving their girl. We reflect on these events not to dwell in the shadow, but to walk toward the light that she left behind. The journey of life is unpredictable, filled with joys and sorrows that we can scarcely imagine. Yet, in the narrative of Keontae, we find a call to action, to live with purpose, to pursue our dreams with the same tenacity she showed, and to hold our loved ones with gratitude that knows no bounds. May her memory be a blessing to all who hear her story, a testament to the fact that while a life may be measured in years, its impact is measured in the lives it touched. Keontae is gone, but she is never forgotten. She is a legacy of a family that knows the truth of love, and she is, in every sense of the word, wonderful. This brings us to the close of this retelling. It has been a reflection on a life that deserved a long future, a life that served as a beacon for her family. We hope that in reading this, you are reminded to hold your own loved ones a little tighter today, to appreciate the simple moments, the birthday cakes, the shared dreams, the laughter in the yard, because those are the things that truly make up the story of a life. The road ahead may be long, but as Keontae's family knows, you must keep moving forward, carrying the love of those you have lost as a compass for the life you have yet to live. The chapter ends here, but the memory continues, woven into the fabric of the family, a story that will be told and retold with the grace and dignity she so richly deserves. May she rest in the peace she sought, and may those she left behind find comfort in the knowledge that they were part of her world, and she forever is a part of theirs. This concludes the account of a life, the echoes of a voice that still resonates, and a love that endures beyond the veil of time. It is a story of humanity in all its fragility and its strength, a story of a girl named Keontae, whose light, though brief, remains as bright as the morning sun. We honor her, we remember her, and we carry her story forward into the days and years to come. This is the story of a young girl with large dreams, a soul who walked through this world with potential to achieve anything she set her mind to, supported by the strength of a family that loved her deeply. Her name was Keontae Chavez, and to understand the light she brought into the world, one must begin with the beginning of her journey. It was November 4th, 1995, in the city of Newburgh, New York. The occasion was a celebration of life, as Keontae turned 1 year old. Her first birthday party was held at the home of her grandmother Mary, a house that stood as the anchor for their family. In the flickering light of the home video camera, Keontae appeared as a little girl who was, for a moment, shy, searching quickly for the familiar and reassuring presence of her father, Tone. Her mother, Niquisha Grissom, was only 17 years old at the time, and like many young parents in the 90s, she wanted to capture every moment, to save the memories so that they could be looked back upon in the years to come. For Tone, every single moment spent with his daughter was precious. The early days of her life were a marvel, a constant stream of new experiences. It was as if every day brought something different, watching her grow, hearing her first attempt at speech, and observing her as she began to explore the world with a curious mind. He felt a profound sense of pride in her even then, as she tried to understand the world around her so quickly. As the family gathered to sing, the little girl began to warm up to the attention, her shyness fading away as she realized she was surrounded by love. Newburgh in the 90s was a place caught in the tides of a difficult era, often described as being in the midst of a crisis due to the crack epidemic. Jobs were lost, unemployment was high, and the community faced significant challenges. However, despite the hardships of the city, there was still the warmth of young love. When Nickwisher and Tone had met in 1993, that love felt like enough to build a future. Tone possessed an outgoing personality and a sense of style that drew Nickwisher to him, and he, in turn, saw in her a kind person, someone he wanted to know. When they discovered they were expecting, there was a mixture of nervousness and fear. They were young, and the weight of responsibility felt immense. Tone wondered if he would be a good father or a bad one, but when Keontae was born, he realized that he had found a new purpose in life. It was the greatest experience he had ever known. At that birthday party, the family joy was palpable. Keontae's godmother, Fika, carefully cut the cake, while the family joker, Uncle Darryl, teased that the toddler should not have to wait to taste the sweetness. After the candles were blown out, Tone engaged in the small, everyday rituals of fatherhood, like struggling with the complicated plastic packaging of toys that required a screwdriver to access the battery compartments. It was a tedious task, but it made him feel good, solidifying his role as a provider and a protector. Grandmother Mary watched over them all. In those early years, the family relied on her wisdom and strength. She was the one everyone went when problems arose, the person who made the final decisions. If Grandmother Mary said it was a law, then that was exactly what it was. She, along with Nickwisher's mother, Gail, took on the responsibility of caring for Keontae while her parents navigated their responsibilities at work and school. As years passed, the natural course of life led Tone and Nickwisher to drift apart. They were young, and they made a decision to go their separate ways, yet the bond of the family remained. In 1999, Nickwisher began her college journey in Atlanta, and it was agreed that great-grandmother Mary and grandmother Gail would take care of Keontae full-time. The decision was not difficult because the child was so close to them, and the bond they shared mirrored the deep connection that Nickwisher had always felt with her own grandmother. However, the world outside was changing. By the middle of the 2000s, Newburgh faced some of the highest crime rates in the United States. Grandmother Mary, ever protector, made the difficult choice to move the family to her hometown of Phoenix City, Alabama. While it was a hard transition, they knew it was necessary to ensure a better quality of life for the young girl. Moving to Alabama felt like night and day. The urban landscape was replaced by forests and trees, and the pace of life shifted significantly. By the time Thanksgiving of 2006 arrived, 12-year-old Keontae Chavis was flourishing. The family reunited at Grandmother Mary's house, where the atmosphere was filled with the comfort of familiar faces. Keontae was growing taller every day, and she found a deep friendship with her cousin Courtney, who was more like a sister or an aunt to her. Out in the yard, Keontae braved the winter chill with her cousins, playing and laughing. She had developed a true passion for basketball, a love that started after she watched the movie Space Jam repeatedly. She had a natural talent for handling the ball, and though she was a quiet child, she carried a massive presence on the court. She possessed the ability to hold her own against anyone. She joined the basketball team in high school, dreaming of one day going to college to continue playing the game she loved. But life has a way of twisting paths when one least expects it. During that basketball season, disaster struck in the form of an injury. Keontae fell, severely damaging her knee. In a split second, the dreams she had nurtured were shattered. It was a heartbreaking moment.